Picture this. You spend your dead wife's $150,000 life insurance, every cent, on the mountain cabin where she dreamed of growing old together. 8 months of 12-hour days, fresh pine shavings under your boots, and you're ready for the family reunion she'll never see. Then a bleached blonde HOA president rolls up in her $80,000 Tesla, designer heels clicking on your hand-sanded deck, and smirks. Pay another $60,000 in 30 days, or we bulldoze it all. I'm Marcus, 52, retired Phoenix firefighter who's faced infernos. But Vivian Blackwood made burning buildings feel like a picnic. The pine scent turned hospital sterile in my throat. What would you do when evil wears Lululemon? Drop your location and worst HOA horror below. Here's how one firefighter burned the predator instead. 3 years ago, my world collapsed when Sarah lost her fight with cancer. 25 years fighting fires in Phoenix, and I couldn't save the one person who mattered most. She used to joke that when I retired, we'd find a cabin in Colorado where the coffee tastes better because you can see mountains while you drink it. When the life insurance check arrived, $180,000 that felt like blood money, I found the magazine she'd hidden under her hospital pillow. A circled listing, 1970s cabin in Ponderosa Heights, Colorado. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, more problems than a rookie's first house fire. But it had Sarah's dream, a wraparound deck facing snow-capped peaks. Ponderosa Heights was a sleepy community of 47 properties scattered like cabins in a fairy tale. Mix of retirees and weekend warriors, the kind of place where neighbors wave and nobody locks doors. The HOA seemed like an afterthought. $200 monthly dues for road maintenance, simple and honest. I threw myself into renovation like my life depended on it. 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. every day for 8 months. The sound of my circular saw echoing off canyon walls became my morning alarm. Fresh cedar stain mixing with coffee at sunrise became my church service. My desk-soft hands grew honest calluses again, creating something instead of just fighting other people's fires. Then the storm clouds arrived in designer clothes. Vivian Blackwood materialized during roof work like a perfectly coiffed vulture. 45, blonde hair that could deflect bullets, driving a white Tesla worth more than most houses. The crunch of her designer heels on my gravel driveway sounded like breaking bones. "You need architectural approval for color changes," she announced, clipboard aimed like a weapon. I climbed down, wiping sawdust from my hands. "Ma'am, I'm replacing rotted wood with identical materials." Her smile could freeze hell. "The stain is 2 shades darker than approved palette." $500 fine. The paper felt thick, expensive, embossed letterhead screaming money and authority I hadn't seen in any purchase documents. "Where's this approved palette?" "HOA Guidelines, Section 12B. She waved toward town like I should have known. But firefighters read manuals. I'd studied every document when I bought. No Section 12B, no color restrictions, no architectural committee. "I'll need to see those guidelines." Her laugh sounded like wind chimes in a tornado. "My assistant will email them." That email never came. But other things did. HOA dues jumped from $200 to $800 overnight. Emergency assessments for road maintenance on roads that looked identical. New vehicle restrictions targeting my truck's faded Phoenix Fire Department decals. Each notice arrived on that same expensive paper, each signed in Vivian's perfect penmanship. Meanwhile, her house, massive glass and steel addition that screamed modern architect, not 1970s cabin, clearly exempt from whatever rules applied to the rest of us. Dorothy Klein, a retired librarian who kept meticulous records, started sharing disturbing intelligence over coffee. 8 families sold in 18 months. "Couldn't afford the new assessments," she'd whisper, stirring her cup like she was mixing secrets. All elderly couples, all sold to the same buyer, Mountain Vista Development. Red flags were flying, but I was focused on finishing Sarah's dream. Hand-scraped hardwood floors that gleamed like honey, stone fireplace that crackled with promise, deck railing smooth as silk under your palm, total investment, $148,000, every penny we'd saved, plus a small loan. The morning I hammered the last board, I stood with coffee watching sunrise paint mountains gold. Perfect timing for the family reunion on Sarah's birthday. 23 relatives coming to celebrate her memory in the place she'd dreamed about. That's when Vivian's Tesla crunched up my driveway again. This time she brought friends, a surveyor with expensive equipment and an attitude that matched hers. The diesel fumes from their truck mixed with my fresh pine stain created a toxic cocktail that burned my throat. "Nice work," Vivian said, those designer heels clicking against my hand-sanded deck like a countdown timer. Shame about the variance violation. She handed me a bulldozer notice. 30 days to pay $60,000 or watch everything turn to splinters. The bulldozer notice felt like holding my own death certificate. Violation of square footage restrictions. 200 square feet of unauthorized enclosed porch addition. Legal jargon that made my head spin, but the bottom line blazed clear. Pay $60,000 in 30 days or watch Sarah's dream become kindling. I called the county permits office at dawn. "Sir, all your work was properly permitted and inspected," the clerk confirmed. "That enclosed porch? Been there since 1978. You just repaired existing structure." Armed with county documentation, I stormed Vivian's office. Converted storefront with Blackwood Property Services, etched in gold lettering worth more than my pension. The leather furniture and fresh orchids couldn't mask the underlying stench of corruption. "Show me where this square footage rule exists," I demanded, spreading original HOA documents across her glass desk. She didn't even glance down. The board voted. Retroactive enforcement. Pay or leave. That word, retroactive, triggered something I'd learned during my fire department's legal training years ago. Colorado law protects property owners from exactly this kind of abuse. HOA rule changes can't reach back beyond 2 years, period. Most states have similar shields, but only if you know they exist. 2 days later, Vivian's retaliation arrived via certified mail. Cease all unauthorized modifications. Daily $500 fines until compliance achieved. My truck violated commercial vehicle restrictions because of faded Phoenix Fire Department decals. The mail truck's engine backfiring as it rumbled away sounded like my world exploding piece by piece. But firefighters don't just spray water at flames. We investigate the source. I started digging through public records like I was searching for survivors in a collapsed building. What I found made my hands shake with rage. This HOA only existed for 2 years. 15 years of peaceful community living under simple maintenance agreements. Then Blackwood Property Services swooped in like vultures. Vivian crowned herself president and started rewriting rules faster than I could replace rotted boards. Her company managed 12 HOAs across Colorado. Same surgical pattern everywhere. Target the vulnerable, create impossible violations, force sales. Dorothy Klein invited me for coffee and conspiracy. At 73, this retired librarian turned her kitchen into mission control. Spreadsheets, property records, newspaper clippings organized with military precision. The cinnamon coffee aroma mixed with righteous anger created an intoxicating blend. 8 families in 18 months, she whispered, sliding documents across her table like classified intelligence. All sold to Mountain Vista Development for 40% below market. All after facing crushing HOA fines. The pattern was surgical, predatory, target elderly residents, recent widowers, anyone without deep local roots. Create expensive violations they can't afford. Force the sale. Rinse and repeat. Then Dorothy detonated her bombshell. Vivian's husband sits on Mountain Vista's board. The next morning brought Vivian's most audacious move. She arrived with a supposed county building inspector complete with clipboard and official-looking truck. But something felt wrong. The license plates didn't match the county format I'd memorized from dealing with real inspectors. "You'll need to allow interior inspection of all modifications," fake inspector announced, sweat beading despite the cool mountain air. I pulled out my phone, hit record. "Absolutely. Let's call your supervisor together and verify your credentials." Color drained from his face faster than water through cracked foundation. He mumbled about scheduling conflicts and practically sprinted to his vehicle. Vivian claimed she'd been deceived by a contractor, but my phone held evidence of attempted fraud. That afternoon, Dorothy organized coffee at my cabin. 12 neighbors showed up, each carrying stories that made my nightmare look like a pleasant dream. Fake emergency assessments, threatened lawsuits over mailbox colors, daily harassment over visitor parking clearly marked as public space. The sound of genuine conversation mixing with pine-scented wind felt like the first clean air I'd breathed in weeks. These weren't just neighbors, they were fellow prisoners planning escape. Vivian struck back with venom. Filed county complaint claiming I operated an illegal bed and breakfast based on multiple cars in my driveway. Demanded my financial records to verify commercial compliance. But I remembered something else from fire department training. Colorado allows one-party consent recording. Every conversation with Vivian was now documented evidence. Even better, I recalled reading about HOA governance requirements during my original purchase research. Board meetings must be properly noticed and open to all owners. Vivian's secret sessions violated state law. I filed formal complaints with the Attorney General's office. The grinding sound of bureaucratic wheels starting to turn was music sweeter than crackling fireplace logs. The war was just beginning, but this old firefighter had found his strategy. As I sipped Dorothy's cinnamon coffee, watching sunset paint the mountains gold, I realized something important. Vivian had made one critical mistake. She'd picked a fight with people who had nothing left to lose and everything to protect. Vivian's revenge came with the precision of a military strike. At 6 a.m. on Sarah's birthday weekend, when 23 relatives were driving from 5 states for our first family reunion, city trucks materialized in my driveway like an occupying army. "Water meter's busted," the foreman announced, pointing to the meter that had worked perfectly for 8 months. "Emergency replacement, $3,000. The paperwork bore Vivian's signature as HOA Water Authority Coordinator, a title that existed nowhere in any legal document, but the jackhammer biting into concrete was real enough. The metallic shriek of breaking pipes mixed with diesel exhaust created a toxic symphony that made my stomach turn. "My family's arriving in 4 hours, I protested. His shrug could have moved mountains. "Should have maintained your equipment better." 20 minutes later, orange cones bloomed around my driveway like poisonous flowers. "Road repairs," another crew announced, dumping gravel chunks that felt like concrete blocks under my boots. My truck was trapped. Visitor access, impossible. Sarah's reunion, destroyed. I called the Real City Road Department. "Sir, we have no crews in Ponderosa Heights. Sounds like someone's using our equipment without authorization." That's when the scope of Vivian's corruption hit me like falling timber. She had connections inside city government, people willing to lend official vehicles for her personal war. The diesel fumes weren't just from construction equipment, they were the smell of institutional rot. But while Vivian orchestrated chaos, Dorothy and I had been building something stronger, a network of people who actually gave a damn. Local 493, my old firefighters union, connected me with attorney Jennifer Walsh. Her voice cut through my despair like a clean blade. "Marcus, I've prosecuted similar schemes. Mountain Vista Development has purchased 8 distressed properties in your community. Your HOA president's husband sits on their board. This isn't harassment, it's organized crime." Jennifer explained something I'd half remembered from testifying in arson cases, the RICO Act. Originally designed to dismantle mob operations, it applies perfectly to coordinated fraud schemes. When multiple people conspire to steal money through fake legal processes, federal prosecutors take notice. Real notice with real consequences. That evening, while my waterless cabin sat surrounded by fake construction barriers, an unexpected visitor knocked. Gerald Patton, the HOA treasurer, looked like a man who'd been carrying concrete blocks on his soul. His accountant's precision was gone, replaced by the trembling hands of someone drowning in guilt. "I need to show you something," he whispered, glancing around like snipers might be watching from the pine trees. "Vivian's been forging my signatures, making up board votes. I've been too scared to say anything." The manila envelope he handed me felt thick enough to stop bullets. Inside, bank statements showing $180,000 in mysterious consulting fees to Blackwood Property Services. No contracts, no work descriptions, no oversight. Just systematic theft disguised as legitimate expenses. "She's stealing from everyone," Gerald said, his voice barely audible over distant generator noise from the fake construction site. "I thought it was accounting errors at first. Then I found documents with my forged signature approving transfers I never saw." The next morning brought Vivian's nuclear option, a lawsuit claiming my renovation damaged neighboring foundations. $25,000 for emergency engineering assessment plus legal fees. Complete fiction. My structural engineers had passed every inspection with flying colors. But defending against false accusations costs money even when you're innocent. And Vivian knew I'd spent every penny on renovation. When I called Jennifer with the lawsuit papers, her laugh sounded like vindication. "They're panicking. Desperate people make fatal mistakes. Keep documenting everything. We're building a federal case." My afternoon social media post exploded across the internet. Disabled veterans' dream home threatened by corrupt HOA. 2,000 shares in 6 hours. Messages flooded in from veterans, retirees, anyone who'd faced similar predators. The local VFW offered their meeting hall and a legal defense fund. Channel 7's investigative unit called that evening. Reporter Sarah Kim had been tracking HOA abuse patterns statewide. "Your situation matches cases we've been investigating across Colorado. These aren't isolated incidents. It's systematic." As twilight painted the mountains purple and the diesel smell from fake construction equipment finally faded, I sat on my hand-built deck thinking about Sarah. She'd have been furious about the canceled reunion, but proud of the fight we were building. Her coffee mug still sat in the kitchen cabinet, waiting for a celebration that kept getting delayed by evil in designer clothes. But something fundamental had shifted. This wasn't about my cabin anymore. It was about every elderly widow bullied from her home, every veteran who'd served his country only to be robbed by petty tyrants. Vivian had started a war thinking she was fighting one lonely firefighter. She was about to discover she'd picked a fight with an entire community that refused to burn. Vivian's desperation reeked worse than smoke from a chemical fire. My viral social media post had attracted Channel 7's attention, and she needed to crush this rebellion before it spread beyond her manicured control. Her nuclear option arrived via process server at dawn. A $50,000 lawsuit claiming my renovation threatened the structural integrity of the entire community. Pure legal fiction. She alleged my foundation work had destabilized neighboring properties, demanding immediate payment for engineering assessments, legal fees, and emergency community safety measures. Complete fantasy. My licensed engineers had passed every inspection with perfect scores. But lawsuits are like structure fires. Even when you're innocent, defending yourself costs everything. Jennifer Walsh spread the papers across her conference table like evidence at a crime scene. Textbook intimidation, she said, pointing to clauses that made no legal sense. But they made a fatal error. They're claiming structural damage that's physically impossible given your actual construction methods. While Vivian wielded legal warfare, Jennifer had been conducting surgical investigation. Through subpoena power, she'd obtained complete HOA financial records. What emerged made Gerald's envelope look like petty theft. $340,000, systematically funneled through shell companies and fabricated consulting contracts spanning 4 counties. But I'd learned something during decades of fighting fires. Sometimes you have to set back fires to stop the main blaze. My afternoon video post showed fake construction crews using city equipment for personal harassment. The footage exploded online, 8,000 shares by midnight, comments flooding in from veterans who recognized institutional corruption when they saw it. VFW Commander Torres called personally. "Son, nobody messes with family." Within hours, a legal defense fund hit $18,000. $20 bills arrived with handwritten notes. "Fight the good fight. Sarah would be proud. Burn them down legally." Dorothy's intelligence operation had transformed her kitchen into mission control. Property records, newspaper clippings, and meticulously handwritten timelines covered every surface. The familiar cinnamon coffee aroma couldn't mask our growing understanding of systematic predation. "Found the smoking gun," she announced, sliding a thick folder across her table with the satisfaction of a detective solving cold cases. Vivian's used identical playbooks in 12 communities. Same fake violations, same forced sales, same mysterious buyers. The machine was elegant in its cruelty. Target vulnerable residents, create impossible financial burdens, force distressed sales to predetermined buyers. Elderly widows were particularly profitable. Grief made them easier to intimidate. Then Dorothy detonated her nuclear revelation. Vivian's real estate license was suspended in Wyoming for manipulating property values. She's legally prohibited from managing HOAs. That evening, Vivian arrived with an entourage that looked like a hostile takeover. 2 private security guards and a locksmith. Her designer heels clicked against my hand-sanded deck like a countdown timer to execution. 24 hours to vacate, she announced, presenting eviction papers with the ceremonial flourish of someone who'd done this before. Unauthorized occupancy of structurally compromised dwelling. I started recording immediately. On whose authority? HOA Emergency Powers, Section 15C? But months of legal research had burned every original document into my memory. There is no Section 15C, your manufacturing authority. Her perfect smile flickered, just for a heartbeat, but long enough to reveal the panic underneath. Sweat beaded on her forehead despite cool mountain air. New board addendum, unanimously approved. By what board? Gerald says no meetings occurred. The mention of Gerald's name triggered something primal in Vivian's eyes, raw fear mixed with rage. Her carefully constructed authority was cracking like ice under spring sun. Gerald Patton has been removed for conflicts of interest, she snapped, but her voice carried the strain of someone whose lies were multiplying faster than she could track them. That night, Channel 7's investigative team transformed my cabin into a television studio. Reporter Sarah Kim had been building a statewide case about HOA corruption. My situation wasn't isolated harassment, but systematic criminal enterprise. We've documented identical patterns in 18 communities, Sarah explained, while camera crews set up lights that made my living room look like an interrogation room. Elderly residents harassed until they sell below market value. Properties purchased by shell companies connected to HOA management. As expensive equipment filled my space, I thought about Sarah's empty coffee mug still waiting in the kitchen cabinet. She'd have been furious about canceled family reunions, but proud of the army we were building. Her dream cabin had become headquarters for a revolution she never could have imagined. But Vivian had made one calculation error that would prove fatal. She'd assumed she was intimidating a lone firefighter who'd fold under pressure. Instead, she'd awakened a network of veterans, retirees, and neighbors who'd spent their lives fighting institutional corruption. People who understood that sometimes you have to burn down the system to save the community. The war was escalating, but for the first time since this nightmare began, I could smell victory mixing with pine-scented mountain air. Gerald's 2 a.m. phone call woke me from nightmares about bulldozers. His voice cracked like breaking glass. "Marcus, I can't sleep, can't eat. I've been helping her steal from our neighbors for 2 years. Meet me at Murphy's Diner. I've got everything." The all-night diner on Highway 9 smelled like burnt coffee and desperation when I arrived. Gerald sat hunched in a corner booth, looking like a man who'd been carrying anvils on his soul. The manila envelope beside his untouched pie was thick enough to stop bullets and contained enough evidence to stop Vivian's empire. "Complete financial audit," he whispered, sliding documents across cracked vinyl with trembling hands. "She's stolen $340,000 from HOA accounts, but that's just what I could document. The real number's probably double." The papers revealed systematic evil that made arson cases look accidental. Vivian hadn't just embezzled. She'd built a money laundering machine disguised as community management. Every emergency assessment was fabricated. Every consulting fee went to shell companies she controlled. Every maintenance expense funded her lifestyle while actual repairs rotted undone. Mountain Vista Development? Gerald's laugh sounded like breaking bones. Owned by her brother-in-law in Wyoming? Every property they buy at distressed prices gets flipped as luxury vacation rentals within 6 months. Total profit so far, $2.8 million. The scope was breathtaking. 23 families across 4 counties systematically harassed until they sold homes for 40% below market value. Properties now generating rental income worth millions, while displaced families struggled to afford apartments. Then Gerald produced the smoking gun that would destroy her. Last month, she forged my signature on an $85,000 transfer, said it was for emergency road repairs. I found the bank security footage. She's on camera presenting fake authorization documents. He slid across printed screenshots from bank surveillance. Crystal clear images of Vivian at the teller window, designer handbag in one hand, forged documents in the other, stealing money meant for community improvements. Her perfectly applied lipstick couldn't hide the criminal intent written across her face. "Document forgery is federal felony with mandatory minimums," Gerald continued, his accountant's precision cutting through emotional fog. "But there's more. I found business records showing identical schemes in Jackson Hole, Park City, Breckenridge. Wherever wealthy people want vacation properties, Vivian helps elderly residents sell cheap." When I called Jennifer Walsh at 3 a.m., her response was immediate. "This elevates everything to federal racketeering. Mail fraud across state lines, wire transfers, systematic elder abuse. The FBI's Economic Crimes Unit lives for cases like this." But Dorothy's discovery that same sleepless night changed our entire strategy. She'd been researching original property deeds with librarian obsessiveness and found Vivian's fatal legal vulnerability. The 1970s community charter never authorized HOA governance at this level. The entire structure violates original county zoning restrictions. The community was established under simple maintenance agreements that specifically protected residents from the control Vivian was exercising. Her HOA charter exceeded authority granted in founding documents and conflicted with zoning laws designed to prevent exactly this abuse. "If the HOA structure is legally invalid," Jennifer explained during our emergency conference call, "then every fine, assessment, and rule has no legal standing. We're not fighting corruption. We're fighting an organization with no right to exist." As sunrise painted the mountains gold, I sat on my threatened deck, understanding the full scope of our war. This wasn't about my $150,000 renovation anymore. It was about dismantling a criminal enterprise that had destroyed mountain communities for years. Vivian had built her empire on forged documents and manufactured authority. But empires built on lies crumble fast when truth arrives with federal badges. The pine-scented morning air carried something new, the smell of justice loading its weapons. Jennifer Walsh's conference room became our war room before sunrise. The smell of burnt coffee mixed with mountain air streaming through windows as evidence carpeted mahogany tables like battle plans from hell. Gerald's hands no longer trembled as he arranged financial documents. Fear had transformed into focused rage. "We're not just stopping Vivian," Jennifer announced, spreading bank records with the precision of a surgeon planning delicate operations. "We're building federal cases that will protect every mountain community from predators like her. Multi-pronged assault, civil damages, criminal referrals, RICO charges, and regulatory complaints that will bury her for decades." The strategy was surgical in its thoroughness. While Vivian expected traditional HOA disputes, small claims, court whining, and neighbor complaints, we were preparing federal artillery. Mail fraud across state lines triggers FBI jurisdiction. Systematic elder abuse activates civil rights violations. Coordinated property theft engages racketeering statutes designed to crush organized crime syndicates. Dorothy arrived with intelligence that made everyone pause mid-sip. Her librarian research had uncovered Vivian's traveling roadshow. Identical harassment operations in Jackson Hole, Park City, Breckenridge, anywhere wealthy people coveted mountain properties. "She's not a local criminal," Dorothy explained, her meticulous evidence organized like a doctoral dissertation. "She's running industrial-scale community destruction for profit." Channel 7's Sarah Kim joined with news that shifted everything into overdrive. Story went national overnight. CNN, Fox, MSNBC. Everyone wants elder abuse combined with property theft in America's vacation playgrounds. This is ratings gold. National media attention created opportunity and danger. Coverage would pressure authorities into rapid action, but also warn Vivian that her window for damage control was slamming shut. Cornered predators become desperate, and desperate people make catastrophic mistakes. "She'll try destroying evidence," Jennifer predicted, reviewing federal prosecution timelines on her laptop. "Everything needs documentation and backup before she realizes federal investigators are circling." I coordinated with VFW networks spanning 5 states. Commander Torres connected us with veterans who'd faced identical HOA predators, creating testimony that would prove systematic criminal enterprise. "Your case isn't isolated," he reported, the satisfaction in his voice audible through conference room speakers. "It's the tip of an iceberg that's been destroying communities for years." Local support exploded beyond imagination. Hardware store donated professional security equipment. Coffee shop created Justice Blend with proceeds funding legal expenses. Bank president personally called offering to freeze Vivian's accounts when federal warrants arrived. The sound of community solidarity felt like hearing backup sirens during a 5-alarm fire. Technical preparation required military-level precision. I installed motion-activated cameras around my cabin with smartphone alerts for intrusion attempts. Gerald copied financial records onto encrypted drives hidden in locations even his wife didn't know. Dorothy created backup documentation spanning Vivian's entire criminal timeline, stored in fireproof safes across 3 counties. Jennifer coordinated with federal prosecutors in Denver who were practically salivating over racketeering possibilities. "Cases like this build careers," she explained while reviewing sentencing guidelines that could put Vivian away for 15 years minimum. Systematic fraud targeting vulnerable populations across multiple states. They're assigning their A-team prosecutors. But our secret weapon was community organization that Vivian's lawyers couldn't combat with threats or intimidation. Dorothy's phone tree reached 60 families within hours. The local diner became unofficial headquarters where intelligence sharing mixed with mutual support. Elderly neighbors who'd been isolated by fear discovered they were part of an unstoppable army. Social media amplified our message beyond state borders. #PonderosaGate gained 25,000 followers overnight. Videos of harassment tactics shared across veteran networks, retirement forums, and HOA abuse groups. Comments flooded in from families who'd faced identical predators, creating a digital support network that spanned the entire Mountain West. The psychological warfare was shifting decisively. Vivian's intimidation worked against isolated individuals but crumbled when faced with organized resistance backed by federal law enforcement. Her expensive civil lawyers weren't equipped for criminal defense against racketeering charges carrying mandatory minimum sentences. Thursday evening, we finalized timing designed to maximize public pressure and legal devastation. Dorothy organized massive community attendance for the next HOA board meeting. Vivian's first public appearance since media attention exploded. Channel 7 would broadcast everything live. Jennifer's federal complaint would detonate Monday morning. Gerald would present forgery evidence with bank security footage as the climactic kill shot. As twilight painted mountains purple and pine-scented air carried the promise of justice, I thought about Sarah's coffee mug waiting empty in the kitchen. She'd dreamed of a place where family gathered in peace, surrounded by natural beauty and honest neighbors. Instead, her insurance money had purchased a war against institutional corruption that threatened everything decent people valued. But maybe that was perfect. Sarah always believed the best victories came from transforming individual suffering into community strength, personal pain into collective purpose. Vivian had started this fight assuming she was crushing one lonely firefighter who'd roll over when pressure mounted. Tomorrow night, she'd discover she'd awakened a community that fought fires for a living and refused to watch anything burn. Vivian's desperation stank like gasoline as her world collapsed in real time. With federal prosecutors circling and national media broadcasting her crimes, she needed to destroy evidence and silence witnesses before handcuffs became inevitable. Her response was pure, scorched earth terrorism. The sabotage struck at 3 a.m. like a surgical knife to the heart. I woke to rushing water that shouldn't exist, my main line severed with precision behind the cabin where cameras couldn't reach. Thousands of gallons gushed into Sarah's memorial rose garden, turning her final resting place into a swampy grave. The metallic taste of panic flooded my mouth as I watched her flowers drowning. Whoever did this knew exactly where to strike, the emergency plumber confirmed, pointing to hacksaw marks on copper piping that had cost me $1,800 to install. Professional sabotage by someone with serious plumbing knowledge. The $2,400 repair bill was nothing compared to the message. I can destroy anything you've built anytime I want. But Vivian had made a critical mistake. She'd violated Sarah's memory, crossing a line that transformed my anger into something colder and more dangerous. Her psychological warfare escalated with military precision. Anonymous flyers appeared on every windshield, printed on expensive cardstock with professional graphics. Dangerous resident alert blazed in blood-red letters above my photo, and fabricated quotes claiming I'd threatened community leaders and exhibited PTSD episodes. The flyers felt slimy between my fingers, but the real poison was manufactured quotes attributed to Sarah. Somehow, Vivian had obtained private information about my wife's final hospital days, twisting her words about fighting until the end into evidence of my supposed mental instability. Violating my dead wife's memory was a war crime that even professional criminals shouldn't commit. Dorothy called that morning, her voice shaking with righteous fury. She's been bribing neighbors, offering assessment waivers for signed statements about your threatening behavior. 3 families took the deal before I could warn them. But desperation was creating tactical errors. Vivian's law firm sent defamation threats demanding immediate removal of my social media posts, claiming $100,000 damages for false accusations. The legal letterhead was impressive, but Jennifer Walsh's laughter could be heard across county lines. "They're threatening to sue you for posting evidence of federal crimes," Jennifer explained. "That's not defamation. That's whistleblowing. They just created a public record of attempting to silence a federal witness." The intimidation campaign reached Gerald with surgical precision. Vivian appeared at his house with 2 men in expensive suits, claiming authority to audit his personal finances for irregularities in treasurer duties. His wife opened the door to find strangers demanding access to bank records, retirement accounts, and tax returns. "She threatened to frame me for the embezzlement," Gerald told me over coffee that tasted like liquid fear. "Said she had documents proving I authorized the transfers. My forged signatures are on everything, but proving forgery takes time we don't have." Then came Vivian's most audacious gambit. Her husband arrived at my door carrying a briefcase that looked designed for either bribery or assassination. Expensive cologne couldn't mask the desperation radiating from his $1,000 suit. $200,000 cash plus legal fees, he announced, setting the case on my deck with ceremonial precision. "Just sign a confidentiality agreement and end this media circus." I activated my phone's recording app, remembering Colorado's one-party consent laws made this federal evidence. "You're offering money to stay quiet about crimes?" His nervous laughter sounded like breaking glass. "Call it compensation for inconvenience. Nobody needs prison time over paperwork mistakes." But as he opened the briefcase, revealing neat stacks of hundreds, something unexpected caught my eye. Bank withdrawal slips with yesterday's date. The money wasn't from some secret account. It was freshly stolen from HOA emergency funds, probably the last cash Vivian could access before federal asset freezes arrived. "This is stolen money," I said, still recording, "from community accounts." His face went white as mountain snow, He'd been sent to commit federal bribery with federally stolen money, creating a compound felony that would guarantee prison time. The briefcase snapped shut faster than a trap, but the evidence was already captured. The most dangerous escalation was Vivian's attempt to corrupt the board meeting itself. She hired private military contractors disguised as security guards, claiming authority to screen attendees and confiscate recording devices. Changed meeting locations twice in 24 hours, each time to more isolated venues where accidents could happen. Captain Torres ended her security theater with one phone call. "Ma'am, this is public property. Private contractors have no authority to restrict constitutional rights." His badge carried weight that Vivian's money couldn't buy. The night before our final confrontation, I sat on my rebuilt deck listening to water trickling through sabotaged pipes, smelling diesel residue from fake construction equipment, thinking about Sarah's drowned roses. Vivian had escalated from harassment to sabotage to federal bribery with stolen money. Every desperate move created new evidence, new witnesses, new charges. She was building her own prison with an expensive hammer, and tomorrow we'd help her move in permanently. The morning of our final showdown, Vivian's panic arrived via 6 a.m. email blast. Emergency meeting cancellation blazed in red letters, claiming credible security threats and legal counsel requiring indefinite postponement. But Dorothy's intelligence network moved faster than Vivian's desperation. Within minutes, 70 neighbors knew the truth. Cowards cancel democracy, but the meeting was happening exactly as scheduled. The community center manager confirmed our reservation remained ironclad. No legitimate authority had requested postponement. By noon, Vivian's private army arrived like an occupying force. Black SUVs with tinted windows, guards built like weaponized refrigerators, clipboards designed to intimidate anyone over 60. Their leader announced authority to screen attendees and confiscate recording devices for security purposes. Captain Torres ended their theater with 3 words and a badge flash: no legal authority. Constitutional law trumped Vivian's mercenaries, but they maintained threatening positions in the parking lot, clearly hoping to scare elderly residents into submission. The most insidious attack came through Vivian's legal team, a neutral mediator, appearing at residents' doors with settlement offers designed to fracture our coalition. The man looked carved from corporate marble, $1,000 suit, predatory smile, briefcase full of hush money. "Miss Blackwood acknowledges certain communication breakdowns," he announced to anyone answering their door. "She's prepared to offer generous compensation for any perceived inconveniences." Jennifer Walsh had prepared me for this trap. Settlement agreements before criminal prosecution are designed to buy silence and complicate federal cases. They're trying to turn victims into accomplices after the fact. As afternoon shadows lengthened across pine forests, our forces mobilized with military precision. Channel 7's satellite truck arrived carrying enough broadcasting equipment to cover presidential elections. Camera crews tested angles while the VFW Honor Guard appeared in full dress uniforms, transforming our community meeting into patriotic ceremony. 90-plus residents confirmed attendance, the largest gathering in Ponderosa Heights history. Overflow crowds would stream everything live on social media, creating real-time accountability that money couldn't buy or corruption couldn't silence. Then Vivian deployed her most audacious final gambit. At 4 p.m., 2 hours before showtime, she attempted to frame Gerald for her crimes. FBI agents arrived at his house claiming to investigate embezzlement by HOA treasurer. They weren't our federal allies. They were agents Vivian had manipulated through her Wyoming political connections. "They showed me documents with my forged signature," Gerald called to tell me, terror cracking his voice like breaking ice. "She's trying to make me the criminal and herself the victim. If they arrest me, I can't testify tonight." But Jennifer Walsh's prosecutorial relationships cut through federal bureaucracy like a hot knife through butter. One phone call to Denver's U.S. attorney revealed the truth. Vivian's brother-in-law had fed selective information to Wyoming politicians who'd contaminated Colorado federal investigations with false witness tampering allegations. The agents questioning Gerald were legitimate but operating on manufactured intelligence designed to neutralize our key witness. Within an hour, honest federal prosecutors clarified the situation, freeing Gerald to attend while adding witness intimidation to Vivian's growing federal charges. As sunset painted mountains gold and parking lots filled beyond capacity, I realized Vivian's final desperate moves had actually strengthened our case. Every bribery attempt, every forged signature, every witness intimidation became documented federal crimes carrying mandatory sentences. The meeting room crackled with electricity that made hair stand up. Channel 7's Hollywood lighting mixed with resident energy to create something that felt historically significant. Dorothy coordinated seating with general-level precision, ensuring maximum visual impact for television audiences nationwide. Gerald arrived looking like a man who'd shed concrete blocks from his shoulders. The manila envelope that had terrorized him for months felt lighter now, transformed from burden into weapon of justice. His forged signatures would finally serve their proper purpose, destroying the criminal who'd created them. Vivian made her entrance with an entourage that looked like a corporate raid. Lawyers, security contractors, the fake mediator still believing money could solve federal racketeering charges. Her designer armor couldn't hide stress fractures around her eyes or the way her manicured hands trembled while arranging documents. The room's atmosphere shifted when she entered, like air pressure dropping before tornadoes touched down. Conversations became whispers. Cameras focused with predatory precision. Everyone felt the historical weight pressing down like mountain snow before an avalanche. But as Vivian took her seat at the board table, something unexpected caught my attention. She was wearing the same expensive watch I'd seen in Gerald's bank security footage, the one she'd worn while committing federal crimes on camera. Either supreme arrogance or complete psychological breakdown had convinced her to wear evidence to her own public execution. The irony was perfect. A criminal so consumed with projecting wealth and authority that she'd accessorized her downfall with stolen money. For months, this predator had terrorized communities, stolen retirement funds, and destroyed families through systematic fraud. Tonight, in front of cameras and federal witnesses, justice would finally bite back. The hunter was about to become the hunted. The community center buzzed with electricity that made the air taste metallic and dangerous. 97 residents crushed into space designed for 40, overflow crowds pressed against walls like witnesses at a public execution. Channel 7's blazing lights mixed with nervous sweat and Dorothy's cinnamon coffee to create an aroma of impending justice I'll carry forever. Vivian called the meeting to order with the serene confidence of someone who'd never faced real consequences. Her voice sliced through tension like expensive perfume trying to mask rotting flesh. Due to recent harassment and malicious accusations against community leadership, tonight's agenda focuses on restoring proper order. She launched into rehearsed remarks about fiscal responsibility and protecting property values, each syllable designed to cast herself as victim of unhinged persecution. Her lawyer nodded approval while security contractors positioned themselves like Secret Service protecting royalty from peasant uprising. But Gerald rose during her opening performance, his accountant's precision cutting through manufactured authority like a scalpel through cancer. Miss Blackwood, before you continue, I must address systematic financial crimes that demand immediate criminal investigation. Vivian's perfect smile cracked, just for a heartbeat, but enough for high-definition cameras to capture the fault line. Mr. Patton, you're no longer treasurer due to documented conflicts of interest. Sit down immediately. Actually, I remain treasurer until properly removed, Gerald replied, his voice carrying authority born from months of carrying explosive truth. And I have irrefutable evidence of embezzlement requiring federal prosecution. The room erupted with murmurs that sounded like avalanche warnings echoing off canyon walls. Channel 7's Sarah Kim stepped forward with microphone extended like a weapon. Miss Blackwood, please explain $340,000 in missing community funds documented in these authenticated financial records. Her lawyer immediately objected. My client won't respond to ambush journalism based on fabricated allegations. But I was already approaching the podium carrying our nuclear evidence, my boots echoing against linoleum like a funeral march for corruption. The manila envelope felt warm in my hands, justice finally ready to ignite. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been systematically robbed, I announced, spreading bank statements across the table where every camera could document them. Vivian Blackwood has stolen over $340,000 from your community accounts, but grand theft was just her warm-up act. I displayed security screenshots showing Vivian at bank windows, presenting forged documents and withdrawing money meant for repairs that never materialized. She forged Gerald's signature to authorize fraudulent transfers to shell companies she controls. Federal document forgery carries mandatory minimum sentences that will end her criminal career permanently. The crowd's energy transformed from curiosity to primal fury as residents grasped the theft's scope. Voices rose like wildfire consuming dry forest. She stole our emergency funds. My dead husband's assessment money bought her Tesla. 20 years of savings, gone. Vivian attempted escape during my presentation, but Captain Torres materialized between her and freedom. Ma'am, these are serious public allegations. You might want to address them before leaving. Sarah Kim pressed forward with television predator instincts. Miss Blackwood Mountain Vista Development purchased 8 distressed properties after your HOA created impossible financial burdens for elderly residents. Your husband sits on their board. How do you explain this coordination? No comment, Vivian hissed, but perspiration beaded on her forehead like guilt materializing through expensive makeup. Gerald stepped to the microphone with evidence that would destroy her completely. I have bank security footage showing Miss Blackwood forging my signature and stealing $85,000 on March 15th. She's wearing the identical watch tonight that she wore while committing those federal crimes. Every lens in the room focused on Vivian's wrist, where her luxury timepiece gleamed like evidence under courtroom spotlights. The cosmic irony was perfect. Vanity had convinced her to accessorize her own public execution. This is coordinated harassment by mentally unstable residents, she protested, but desperation cracked her voice like ice under spring pressure. Mr. Marcus requires psychiatric intervention for delusional episodes. That triggered the moment I'd rehearsed for months. The only delusion here is your psychopathic belief that you could rob veterans and elderly widows without facing consequences. The room exploded with standing ovation that sounded like justice arriving with federal sirens. Residents who'd been terrorized for years were witnessing their predators' public destruction in real time. FBI agents positioned throughout the audience, our legitimate federal allies, stepped forward with badges displayed like holy symbols. Miss Blackwood, we need to discuss these criminal allegations at our downtown offices immediately. Her lawyer whispered frantic damage control while she stared at evidence scattered like fragments of shattered authority. The expensive perfume couldn't mask career-ending panic radiating from her designer armor. As Channel 7's cameras documented every second of Vivian Blackwood's collapse. HOA terrorist, systematic thief, community destroyer. I thought about Sarah's empty coffee mug waiting at home. The predator had finally encountered prey with federal teeth and the courage to use them. 6 months later, I woke to my phone buzzing with notifications from across America. The Denver Post headline blazed, HOA corruption queen sentenced, 3 years federal prison. But the real celebration was happening in my kitchen, where Sarah's coffee mug finally held coffee again, while I read messages from families who'd used our playbook to defeat their own HOA predators. Vivian Blackwood's sentencing had been poetry in judicial motion. 3 years federal prison, $340,000 restitution, lifetime ban from HOA management, and a felony record that would follow her like stench from burning garbage. Her designer clothes couldn't hide orange jumpsuit destiny any longer. The community transformation was even sweeter than revenge. Our rebuilt HOA operated like democracy instead of dictatorship. Monthly dues dropped to $150 for actual maintenance, transparent budgets posted online, resident votes on every major decision. Dorothy's presidency had turned us into a model that HOA reform advocates studied across the nation. Mountain Vista Development's collapse created a beautiful domino effect. Federal asset seizure recovered every stolen property, compensation flowing to elderly victims who'd been robbed of their retirement dreams. The luxury vacation rental empire built on fraud crumbled faster than a house fire consuming dry timber. But my greatest victory was transforming pain into purpose through the Sarah Memorial Foundation. Operating from our rebuilt community center, we'd provided legal aid to over 400 HOA abuse victims in our first year. The scent of fresh coffee mixed with hope instead of fear as families found courage to fight institutional bullies. Jennifer Walsh had leveraged our success into Colorado's premier HOA abuse practice. You proved that organized resistance defeats organized crime, she said during our quarterly foundation meeting. Victims just needed someone to show them how to punch back legally. The ripple effects reached Washington, where the Ponderosa Protection Act was advancing through Congress. Named after our little mountain community that refused surrender, federal legislation would require HOA financial transparency, independent audits, and criminal penalties for systematic abuse. Capitol Hill staffers called it the law that came from one firefighter's refusal to burn. Gerald had found redemption through whistleblowing, his accounting precision now protecting communities instead of enabling theft. I sleep better knowing my signatures only authorize legitimate expenses, he told families visiting our foundation. His forensic audits had exposed 12 more corrupt boards across 4 states. The hammering of our new community center construction echoed off canyon walls like freedom's symphony. Built entirely with recovered stolen funds, the facility housed legal aid offices, victim support groups, and training programs teaching elderly residents to recognize and resist financial predators. Colorado's HOA Transparency Act required open records and independent oversight for every community association statewide. Similar legislation was spreading across mountain states where wealthy predators targeted vulnerable retirees. Our local nightmare had become national protection. The annual Ponderosa Freedom Festival celebrated its second year with barbecue smoke mixing with pine air to create the authentic smell of community. Neighbors choosing to help instead of harm each other. Whistleblower awards honored courage, while legal aid fundraising supported families still fighting corruption. Channel 7's Emmy-winning documentary about our case was becoming required viewing in law schools, journalism programs, and elder advocacy training. Sarah Kim had parlayed the story into exposing corruption nationwide, her career built on our foundation of refusing to stay silent. But the deepest satisfaction was personal healing. My deck, rebuilt stronger after Vivian's sabotage, hosted our third annual birthday celebration for Sarah. 31 family members gathered without fear of bulldozers or HOA terrorism, children playing in gardens that had survived destruction to bloom more beautiful than before. Standing where this nightmare began, watching grandchildren explore mountains Sarah never got to see, I thought about her final words. Turn the pain into purpose, Marcus. Make suffering mean something. Her insurance money had purchased more than a mountain cabin. It had bought justice for countless families and legal protection for communities nationwide. The empty coffee mug was full again, not with grief, but with purpose that would outlive us both. Dorothy approached carrying foundation paperwork and her signature cinnamon coffee. Marcus, we just confirmed expansion into 5 more states. Sarah's legacy is going national. As mountain wind carried children's laughter across peaks that had witnessed evil's defeat, I understood something profound. Sometimes the best way to honor the dead is by protecting the living. Every HOA horror story doesn't have to end in surrender. Your nightmare could be the next victory story that changes everything. Drop your worst HOA experience below, you're not alone, and silence only helps the bullies win. Subscribe for justice stories that prove ordinary people can defeat extraordinary corruption when they refuse to stay quiet.